What's up, and welcome to Groundbreaking, a friendly original podcast celebrating and sharing the stories of young creatives across the music industry who are embarking on and writing their own journeys. Each episode, we feature a new up-and-comer, discuss their work, and make sure we leave you with a takeaway too. I'm Jake Brewer. Let's get started. Today, I'm joined by essentially the leader of New York's indie scene, the founder of Antisocial Club, Berklee NYC professor, and songwriter-producer, Danny Ross. From helping produce hit singles, scoring Hulu series, doing Apple commercials, founding a producer collective with over billions of streams and dozens of Grammys, and launching the Antisocial Camp with over 150 artists writing hundreds of songs, Danny's pretty busy, but today he joined me for a real transparent conversation about building his community, how he uplifts artists and creators around him by bringing them together, and where he sees the future of music is headed. Welcome back to Groundbreaking, everybody. I am so thrilled that you're here with us today. This has been an episode that I knew we were going to be able to do this season, and I just knew there was going to be a million little takeaways, not only for myself, but for you as well. I already have my notebook in front of me because I'm just going to be frantically writing this entire conversation. We're going to be talking a lot about community and how we build community and kind of why it's intuitive, but also like not intuitive for artists and creative people to surround themselves with community, which is a discussion I love having, as you all probably know, because it always just comes up. But today we really get to focus on that. So I'm absolutely thrilled to have this conversation today. My guest, I tried prepping and figuring out what I was going to ask him, and I just was like, this needs to be its own series. And you know, I'm the most indecisive person that probably has ever lived. And so I had no idea even where to begin this conversation, but I'm really just excited to hear what's on our guest's mind today, what he's learned over the past couple years doing all the incredible work that he's done in New York. And I'm also just really excited to ask him what's happening next, because I think it's only going to get bigger from here. If we were looking at the past couple years, that's what it shows us. So enough of me talking. Nobody needs that today. We need to hear from our guest, Danny Ross. Welcome to Groundbreaking.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jake. I am a fan of what you have put together and built over the last few years yourself, and it's a pleasure to be here. Hopefully, I can guide your listeners in the right direction, or be somewhat entertaining for the next 30-40 minutes.
I guarantee you will. I'm not worried about that at all, because I was reading over. Well, I feel like I can first like sort of admit I was like, okay, like I know like enough about Danny. There's a reason why we wanted you on the show. But then I was like, I was looking like an hour ago, and I was like, hey, let me like refresh my memory, make sure. And I'm like, okay, so wait, so now he's works at Berklee, New York too. Like, I was like, I literally can't keep up with you, and I mean that in the best like possible way that has ever like existed. And so again, like I just don't even know where to start. But I feel like one of my favorite questions to ask creative people lately, and maybe we can just kind of go here first, is like, what did the first day in your music career look like? What were you doing? Where were you? How old were you? And what were you thinking?
That is a great question, and what somebody considers their first day to be considered in their music career is an interesting question in itself. You know, what was the first day of my music industry career? Um, it is open to a lot of interpretation. I'd probably say that I put together a pretty unique college degree. It was one of those make your own programs designs, and I basically created a pop music program at Cornell, where I went to school, and over the course of a year, wrote an album with music professors and poetry professors, and put together a 17-piece orchestra, and learned how to write and arrange a whole record. And that was the day I performed that, which was my college thesis. I considered to be, this is the first day of the rest of my life in music. And it's a train that hasn't stopped. It definitely is not a train that is traveling on any straight line. It's lots of valleys and side tracks. And I have a feeling a lot of our conversation is going to be about, you know, the wondrous tangents that we all go on. But
Yeah.
that was probably really day one for me.
I am already amazed because you've already accomplished more in college you than I think I even could fathom. I love just I feel like it just shows so much of who you are immediately to be like I just created my own sort of path. And I think that's such a great mentality, and I'm already like smiling ear to ear because I always kind of say like especially just in music entering with that sort of mentality of like I'm just going to do like what I want to do. I think it's so easy to fall into the like footsteps of the people that you admire just because
Mm.
we jump to a conclusion of like, oh, this is the next step just because that's the most evident, and we don't like that ambivalence of not knowing what to do next. So I like that you kind of immediately just were like, this is the right path for me. And I just have this like feeling that that mentality has helped you beyond college. Um, Post college though, well,
Mm.
actually, I don't even know if this is true. Uh, Antisocial Producers Club. I'm going to be saying
Mm.
that like a million
Yes.
times today. And I have
Yep.
a feeling that you're like, I've talked about this so many times, but like, I want to keep talking about it. That's the thing that like I really associate your name with. And I hope you
Yeah.
really do feel proud of that because I think that's an amazing
Yeah.
feat. Um, and I first came across it a couple years ago when I was new to New York and I was trying to figure out like, okay, who are the people that I should like talk to? And I was like, oh wait, there's this whole like community that already exists. And it's funny, like community sounds so far from the way I associate just New York being too. And so it immediately
Mhm.
was kind of like this interesting like green flag for me. Um, Hopefully this is an easy question for you to answer, but share with us just as much as you can of like, why did you feel like now or back in 2021 was the time to do antisocial, and like what empowered you to like really go like I can be the one to like to do this too.
Yeah, great question. A little backdrop on me. So when I first moved to New York in 2007, I pursued an artist path for 5, 6 years. Um, eventually decided that that wasn't the path for me. Took a little while to regroup. I ended up getting a gig as a music writer for Forbes magazine and interviewed about 100 or so folks, including some amazing, talented people like Questlove and folks around Jack Antonoff and a lot of behind the scenes players, and realized just through those personal conversations, hey, I think the role of behind the scenes music producer, songwriter is actually where my personality is best suited. Um, and then just started jumping into sessions and becoming a music producer in New York City. At first, getting indie cuts, and then working my way up to a major label. And ultimately, I started talking to other music producers, and we realized there isn't a formal community for us to discuss the things that matter to music producers, whether it's the nerdy stuff like plugins and gear, or contracts and artists and A&Rs to meet with, or artists to stay away from. All of the things that matter. There's BMI and there's ASCAP, and there are the PROs that uh, sort of act as a forum for larger creative conversations in music, but it's too broad, right? As producers, we want to talk to our people about our issues. So I thought, hey, let's start a formal community called Antisocial Producers Club. This was also during the pandemic when people were especially hungry for community, right? No one could leave
Yeah,
their
yeah,
apartment or their door. Um, I felt particularly like someone who could do this because, speaking of tangents, my day job while I was pursuing my own band was I worked in government, right? So community building is something that I was used to. Um, I worked for Congressman Jerry Nadler for 5 years. I was a press secretary and a chief of staff in the New York State legislature. So the idea of like organizing broadly And also being in music are two things that always went hand in hand with me,
Yeah, yeah.
um, which is sort of a strange duality, but it's always been my thing for one reason or another. And so at first it was just a handful of friends Zooming, like, hey, let's talk about producer stuff. And within a year, it was 75 producers with billions of streams and dozens of Grammys. And it was like, whoa, something is happening here. There's a hunger for community. You know, the big the there were two criteria for being an antisocial producers club. One is you have to be a commercial music producer, not just an artist who produces for your own project, but someone who
Hmm.
produces for other projects. And then two, you have to be a New Yorker. We're like, while we're at it, let's try to make this New York specific because everyone's been leaving for LA and Nashville and Austin, LA in particular, over the last decade or so. So let's remind the industry that there is a very healthy, energetic pool of talent here in New
Yeah.
York because I know so many talented people here, and yet you'll talk to label A&Rs and they'll say, well, there's no one in New York. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So kind of creating a community or central hub for New Yorkers and New York talent was something I set out to do as well. And this sort of collective of New York producers has evolved into a songwriting camp. And we just finished our third year of Antisocial Camp, and it is now the biggest songwriting camp in the world. And I'm happy to
Jesus.
sort of get into some of the details of the camp as well. But that I hope that sort of broadly answers what is this collective? Why are we here? What's the purpose of it?
I My mind is just so blown. I learned like 8 new things about you in the past minute. Um why why do you think nothing like antisocial had happened before now? Or like
Mm,
in and I guess in New York specifically, and I really asked that cuz like
right.
I consider myself a member of like this New York community too. So it's so interesting as somebody who spent like plenty of time in Nashville and LA as well, like the differences that really exist here. Why, I guess, why did that not exist here? And then kind of side question that is like, why is it so much harder here than maybe in other cities?
I was surprised to find that there were no collectives of New York creative artists, musicians, songwriters, producers. I was surprised by this too. I didn't think I would be the New York guy. I thought that I was creating one aspect, one specific niche that represented New Yorkers in the New York music scene, and that there were likely five or six others, right? One for songwriters, one for artists, one for music venues and library. I know who knows. It goes on and on and on. It's a big industry with lots of niches. I was just representing one. It turned out there was no one doing anything in any of the other niches to rally around New Yorkers specifically. I don't even know if in other cities there are organizations to rally around the niches within the music industry, and it's a real wasted opportunity because obviously, we just finished our third year doing this, and look at the impact that it's had, right? Like this has not been going on for very long, and already we're like a globally known organization.
Hmm.
So, it's hopefully this inspires others to, feel like they can turn to the artists, songwriters, producers around them and say, let's join forces rather than view each other as competition because, the creation of this collective and the camp and everything that's come out of it has helped everyone's career, right? Not just in terms of the spirit of it, but artists are getting cuts and producers and songwriters are getting cuts
Yeah.
and releases and jumping into sessions and into bigger sessions as a result of this organization. So it's in everyone's best interest and their careers to join together.
Yeah. I I love what you just said because it proved wrong something I believed, I think, for maybe a little bit too long, and I definitely don't agree with now of like success in music, however you define it, is not like a zero sum or even like finite
Right.
thing. Like
Right.
another person's success doesn't take away from your sort of opportunity. And I've thought a lot just about in my own kind of personal thoughts and career of like why I believe that and who taught me that, and like that I didn't just make that thought up. Like I'm a very optimistic and
Yeah.
naive person. Like I wouldn't have gone that like there. And so I don't know. I wonder like where I got that from. And for you, I want to ask, what do you think about when people maybe believe that community isn't the way to grow because we're kind of all in competition with one another? Or what do you think
Mm.
about when somebody feels like, you know, co-writing might not be the best thing because then it's like they're going to want credits on this, and then it gets complicated.
So I think the only person you should be in competition with is yourself. Period. Um, you know, uh, if your artist career isn't working because people have said to you, you need to work on your vocal, like you should be working on your vocal and doing that in a way that is life and death. In a way, it is, right? That you have a short period of time in pop music to make an impact. You know, the second you reach a certain age, the calculus changes. So, um, you know, you need to go all in on whatever skill set, whether it's performance or vocal or guitar, piano, um, whatever it is. And you achieving the best version of your own skill set is has nothing to do with anyone else and what they're achieving, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to blame others too, right? It's easy to be jealous of the artists that you know who are doing well. I continue to kind of suffer from that,
Yeah, me as
and it's an
well.
instinct we all have to. You know, it's natural, and Instagram doesn't help, right? TikTok doesn't
No.
help.
No.
Um, and it's a human instinct, but we need to do our best to fight it because those people are succeeding, um, and it has nothing to do with you. And
Yeah.
if you're able to really identify, hey, what is it about me and my project that is preventing others from seeing uh, the quality in it and preventing me from going all the way, we need to take self-responsibility and just put all of our eggs into the basket of fixing those issues or finding others. So for example, I feel like my artist project from when I was in my 20s didn't work because of my vocal, right? I recently teamed up with the best vocalist I know, and we're starting the first artist project that I'm truly pursuing in 10 years. And I feel so much more relaxed and confident in it because I outsourced the hardest thing, and everyone listening right now has the ability to outsource the hardest thing. If you want to do it yourself, great, do it, but know that it's going to take a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
And think about what is your superpower? What is the thing that makes you the most you? Because that's the thing that is going to shine um, on a record, in a show, over Instagram. For me, it was songwriting. And I realized that even more than the production, even though my whole thing is being a producer and starting a producers
Yeah.
collective, I realized that it's my songwriting that makes me the most me, and so I'm going to put myself in a position where that can come across the easiest, and it's obvious, right, with the best singer I know. So that's just an example. That was a little bit of a rant, but hopefully that helped.
No. No, not at all. I just want to I want to go back to one of the things you said of just like it's not about you. Like, and
Mm.
I feel like I'm going to hear you say that every single time I start to think of like or fall like victim to that, like this person's doing this, or like I didn't get this and this person like did, like it has nothing to do with me. Like, and then so
And nothing to do with
why
you,
am I
right?
pulling myself like into that? So I really like that mentality because it almost like it's not taking it so serious. It's just it's like laughing it off, which I
You know what
think is the
it? Do
way
you know
that
what
I
it? Do
cope
you
with
know
things.
what it actually is admiration, right? I want to
Yes.
achieve in the way that person achieved. I want to have, um, beat obstacles the way that person sort of jumped over obstacles, and do so successfully. So it's a gap. It's actually a positive sign. Jealousy, right? It's because it's representing a gap between where you are now and where you'd like to be.
Yeah.
So let it push you, let it motivate you, let it get you angry that you're not where you are now, and let it put you to work.
Ooh, yes. Okay. You're speaking my language because I consider myself a very stubborn
English,
person. Yeah. And like growing up, I was very, very stubborn. And I feel like my stubbornness is manifested in my adulthood as I always say, like, the best way to get me to do something is to tell me you don't think I can do it. And then I'll like really want to do it. And so I think
right?
that's so internal to me, and intuitive. But when it comes to community, are you finding that artists are that intuitive with connecting with other people? Because I always just find like the idea of we feel like, and maybe this is a little bit of a generalization, but we feel like the kind of best work that we're creating is the stuff that feels really, really personal, and it can be harder to go like a little bit more public with. So when we're sharing that with other people so comfortably and so many times, like when you write with somebody and you're like, this is the first time we've ever met and you know just as much about me as my therapist does now. Like that's an insane phenomenon that probably doesn't exist many other places. Do you
Right.
find it intuitive and easy for people to share that? And if not, what's the messaging or the hurdle that gets them to that point?
It's funny you mentioned this. I just started a new semester as a professor at the Berklee NYC program, which is the New York's new Berklee 1 year master's program. And the class that I teach is Principles of Collaboration, which is essentially discussing and guiding students through collaborating essentially for the first time and talking about the very things that you're talking about, right? How do you open up in such a way that you're creating impactful, meaningful material so that artist will release the song? And how do you get an artist to open up in that way? Maybe if they don't want to, if you're on the songwriter or production side, it's a very interesting dynamic. And I think it's an amazing thing when it works, and it doesn't always work. We are, whether you like it or not, in a stage in the music industry where collaboration is the default state of songwriting, right? I don't think that there's been just one person credited to a Billboard song that has charted
Mm,
in a long time, if any at all. I don't know the stats on that. You'll have to fact check me.
sure. I can't
Um,
think of one.
but
So there you go.
yeah, I think the average song has 4 or 5 sort of folks listed. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that people who did not used to be credited are now being correctly credited, right? Like
Yeah.
producers or instrumentalists who have a large portion to do with the songwriting. You know, the music industry has not always been kosher, for lack of a better word, and it's starting to become more fair and equitable, which is great. Um, but whether we like it or not, this is how we write songs now, right? And it is an interesting dynamic. There's typically a producer in a room, a songwriter, top liner in the room, and the artists themselves. And it's a service industry. We are, the producers and songwriters are in service of the artists in hope that you can create a song that is impactful enough for them that they want to release it. Otherwise, it sits in a hard drive forever.
Yeah.
And most songs sit in a hard drive forever. And
Yeah.
that is the hard part. That's the hard part about being a creative in this industry. Financially, it's also kind of that part of it is also a bummer, because there's no day rate for a producer or songwriter, right? So like an
Mm,
artist is incentivized to, hey, let's create 100 200 songs for my next album, and I'll pick my favorite 10 and I only have to pay for those 10. Meanwhile, like, producers and songwriters have spent a whole bunch of time,
yeah.
on material that's probably very good, that won't get released, that will just sit there and no one gets paid for that, right? So that's kind of a bummer. And
Yeah.
I think a system that we need to shift. I don't know how, I don't know when, but we can talk about that. Our unionizing efforts. Maybe we'll join the Hollywood writers and actors to make that happen
Yeah.
someday.
I see this is where I want to go down this whole tangent with you about, because I feel like this is the time when this movement's going to happen about and maybe, and you can, I don't know, you can disagree with me on any of this, but I feel like maybe it's just because I'm more aware of this. Maybe that's why I think this is the time. But you could also be like, this is the way it's been forever. Like Jake, like, sorry to like burst your bubble there, but I I feel that way, and like I even like talk to some artists who are like always really hesitant to like even collaborate because it's like, well, the more people I add, like the less like I like everyone wants everyone to be compensated fairly, but it's like especially in like the indie kind of like space of music, like it's so wrong. It doesn't feel right for us to be like doing it for like money, but it's also like everyone kind of knows like you got to start getting some like income if this is going to be sustainable and this is like what you want to do. It kind of feels like the unspoken kind of thing that nobody likes to talk about. Even I still have a hard time talking about splits and everything. Like it just makes me so uncomfortable,
Yeah,
but it's like I want everyone to be compensated so fairly. And I
yeah,
you put it so perfectly of, there's so many songs that like all the work goes in there, and it's like just because it's not released nobody's being compensated for that
right.
work. And I'm so tempted just to ask you what the solution is there, but you'd probably be like, if I had it, I would be snapping my fingers right now. But maybe I'll ask you an easier version of that. Of
Mhm.
what do you think is the is the starting solution to making everybody else in the room um, feel credited and compensated? And maybe that's even this is the longest question I've ever asked on this show. But like what is like or maybe what's the question an artist could ask them or something to make them like know that like that they're respected or anything like that. Do you have any advice to how to make that room feel more
Yeah,
respectful?
totally. Without going into a total deep dive into the business of songwriting, and just because that's it's not my specialty per se, although I can speak about it a little bit. This is what I would tell everyone: make all your splits equal. It's not worth it. Otherwise, it's not worth the bad feeling. And there's not enough money to justify a 65-35 split versus a 52-48. If you have a major label recording contract or you are selling out, 2,000-3,000 people auditoriums, okay, that's a whole other level. That's a different conversation. But, most of us are in the indie space. We're all trying to climb our way into relevance, really. Don't fight about nickels and dimes. Like, you want to create a reputation amongst other creatives and industry people that you're easy to work with and that you're a lot of fun. You want to be known for a good vibe. You're not going to create a good vibe by being petty, and it's not even worth it. Like for an extra, maybe, whatever it is. I mean, the real opportunity to potentially make money that for songs that are sitting on hard drives or um, that are being released in through an indie release on Spotify or streaming
Hmm.
would be one sync. Like you could get lucky and get a $20,000 sync. Great, but then you have to split that three ways, and like even then, and then the company has to take its commission. But even then, if you have like a little bit more point split, you're talking about a couple $100. Like it's not worth it. And then the other opportunity is if your song somehow goes viral on TikTok or Instagram. That's the other thing I was going to say is like for artists, I wouldn't spend time focusing on live shows. I wouldn't spend time focusing on anything but getting amazing at TikTok and Instagram. And I hate that I'm giving this advice
Yeah.
because I'm personally not great at either of those things. And I don't like either of those things. I'm 39. I'm sort of a different generation. But that's what being an artist is being great at Instagram and TikTok. And then, part of your larger personality brand is you make music. That's
Yeah.
one spoke of the wheel, right? And then there are all these other spoke of the wheels, like you perform, or you're a model, or you do X, Y, or Z. So just know what your role is as an artist, and that is to be a known personality,
Yeah.
not to be necessarily a songwriter, producer, or anything else. Although it's nice if you're those things too.
Yes. I think you put that in the best way possible of like breaking the news that we all kind of like knew but we're in denial of,
Yeah,
because like I would much rather spend my day writing with people or I don't know, anything other than just like making draft after draft after draft of TikToks, just
yeah,
because I would so much rather just be a consumer on that app. But
right.
I think it's where the industry is now. Do you think,
Right.
and this I'm so tempted to go on another tangent. You can pull me back if you want, but of like, how long is that going to last? Do you think? And we're not going to hold you to this, but
Mm.
like is the next, even the generation after, like, are they still going to be on TikTok too, or no?
It's a good question. I think probably not. I mean, TikTok was people just started like the music industry started being dominated by what in like what the last 2 years.
Yeah,
Like who knows what it will be 2 years from now. It'll be something. I'm not sure what it is. I mean, I'm hopeful that that the music itself will be start to be judged a bit more rather than all these other visual kind of
yeah,
um, things. That being said, like I thought I wrote a big article in Forbes about how rock is dead and that the electric guitar will never be heard again. And then Olivia Rodrigo came out, and I was like, well, it's true that things change quite a bit in music, and I'm bad at prognosticating about it. So I won't predict the future.
yeah,
But what I will say is that it will change dramatically, probably in the next 12 months, and it'll probably change dramatically the next 12 months after that. The question is, if you're pursuing art right now, and you want to have an audience right now, you need to go to where the audience
yeah,
is right now,
yeah.
right? I mean, if you can get ahead of it and try to figure out what happens next, do so. But don't kid yourself by thinking that if you just make great songs, that's going to be enough. It's not.
Yeah, unfortunately. And that's the part. I feel like I'm going to take so many clips from this episode and just listen to them on repeat. I'm going to have like a compilation of this episode of everything you've said, of just like, it's going to be like pep talk from Danny. It's going to be a file on my phone. Um, okay. I want to make just an aggressive shift to, let's talk about the camp, because I want to make sure
Yeah.
we hit about
Right.
this a ton, because I just think this is
Yes.
so amazing. And I really just feel like you started at the perfect time when this is exactly what everybody was craving. Um, I guess, how did the club translate to the camp? And was that like, was that always the intention of starting the club, was to like bring it in that sort of like
No.
form?
No. It definitely was not its original intention. By the way, it was never my original intention to be known as this guy bringing together the New York music community. I was trying to be an artist and a producer, right? Like
Yeah,
everyone else. Um, it's important though to see where there are all the doors are closed in the music business, period, right? And wherever there are little windows or like points of advantage or opportunities, it's important to try and jump in and take advantage, because believe it or not, me putting together just a bunch of producer friends over Zoom has been my big break in the music industry. So like, you just never know where it's going to come from. That being said, to answer your question, the camp, I was seeing that songwriting camps are these very exclusive major label events where songwriters or producers are sent out to the south of France for a week, maybe 9 or 10 of them to write Rihanna's next album. And then,
yeah,
you'll see a photo on Instagram from one of these very famous people getting treated to sushi lunches every day, living their best life out in Provence, right? And it's just like, well, that must be nice. For that, top 0.1% of songwriters and producers. And I thought to myself, there isn't a festival style, more public oriented type of event for the rest of us
yeah,
producers and songwriters. And especially coming off of creating this collective, I'm like, what? We have all the producers, right? Um, let's start attracting the artists and the songwriters from across the world to come in and work with us and help put New York City back on the map. And we'll create a songwriting camp of our own, but instead of it being this very exclusive affair, it'll be a bigger event. Still curated with an application process, but something that's open for most of us. And 3 years later, we have about 200 artists, songwriters, and producers people coming into the camp that are part of it, like Moby, Andy Grammer, Walk the Moon, Grace Vanderwall, Ex Ambassadors, Kimbra, Nile Rodgers, Rostam from Vampire Weekend, Linda Perry, um, and dozens and dozens more
Yeah.
who I haven't even mentioned. And we're partnering with Spotify and YouTube, and the mayor of New York himself is a part of it and has been there. Uh, and Amazon Music and all the PROs and the Orchard and the Muse and Topo Chico and Brooklyn Brewery and on and on and on. Just it didn't take very much to get all of these artists and partners on board. When I realized we're basically the only music event created to put New York City back on the map and to be the
Yeah.
South by Southwest for songwriting, right?
Yeah.
The thing that I haven't mentioned here is that I talked about sort of the advent of the exclusive major label songwriting camp, but as that event has become more in the lexicon of creatives more broadly, there's this desire by the average songwriter producer to be involved with songwriting camps, and this is really the first broad attempt to make that an achievable goal for most creatives. So I think that's the reason why it's been so successful so quickly, and it has surprised me as much as it has surprised everyone else.
Yeah. Do you feel like everybody kind of walks through those doors and are just like, this is what I've been waiting for? This is exactly what we needed?
100%. And also, look, I'm a producer writer myself. I'm at the helm of creating this, very large and complicated 6-day event in
Yeah.
which 100 plus new songs are created, and there are concerts, parties, showcases, galas, education events every day as well, and it's all completely free. So my goal was to overwhelm uh, all of my fellow artists, producers, and songwriters with what would be the most incredible event that you could imagine that is completely free for you.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to collaborate, have 3 or 4 sessions with some of the best other creatives in the world, have a bunch of records cut, and then party and play shows and uh, and and network with all of these folks, so I can continue making records with some of the best artists around moving forward. So that was kind of the goal.
Yeah, and what a dream week for everyone too. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know, like I'm sure, yeah, they'd want to meet new people, sit in a session, meet new people, play shows, like, and have a good time. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to say that's hard to sell because I know it takes a ton of work. So I don't want to undermine that, but I think
right.
like the appeal is so obvious to me. And I know you guys have the showcase at the end of the week or the end of the day, or at one point like you get to hear all the songs that are written. I just like that
Right.
is insane that you just get to like absorb so much music, and this was all just created here and by people within this community, and being the bridge that brings people together. That's amazing.
For
You
sure.
must
Yeah,
feel just overwhelmed
there
all the time.
there are about 115 sessions across 20 recording studios in 3 days in New York City, and that's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And by Friday, we're listening back to all the songs at the playback party, and you can tell which songs are hit and maybe which songs need some more work. But either way, just the that achievement is it's something in itself.
Yeah. I love One of the things that I love that this is just doing is I feel like New York is unique, where like there are so many talented people, songwriters, producers, engineers, studio managers, everything. But like it's so hard to find them all because everybody like makes these
Right.
great relationships, and it's ironic that the hardest part of that process is just discovering one another, because
Right.
there's so many people. I haven't had a bad experience with somebody I've worked with in New York. Everyone's been so lovely, and I feel like it's such a testament to you and your work too. Of I heard your name so many times in the past year, and about the camp from people that I was working with. from like different people too, or like I was never in the same room as those people, like, or
Mm.
those other people at the same time. And I was just like, this guy just knows what he's doing. Do you feel like year over year, as you're kind of gathering and gaining this like praise, and people now value this as kind of like an annual thing in their career that really like helps them, do you feel any sort of pressure forming to like continue to deliver that to all these people who care about it now so much, and probably are, hoping to get more out of it the following year?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I'm here to serve my community, right? My people, and I'm here to whatever extent I can, help put them on the map. And the thing that creating a community or being at the helm of organizing one does, it quickly makes you a fan of all of the people that are in it, and
Mm-hmm.
the talent is just tremendous. And I want to help lift them up. I want to help lift New York up, which is why we're working with the mayor's office and the We Heart and NY, initiative and all that, and are part of all of these educational components as well, including the Berklee program. Yes, I definitely feel pressure, but going back to your point a moment ago, one of the reasons that I felt compelled to initiate a community is when I moved to New York. I was looking for the central hub. I'm sure you were too, right? Like in the '80s, it was CBGB's, and before that, it was, the Brill Building and Tin Pan Alley and Greenwich Village, and and the Bronx for hip hop, and there there were known there were known places to go where you could find people like you doing something like you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I moved to New York and I couldn't find it. And I'm like, where are my people? And so I feel like if I can create something of a hub where it's just like, you kind of know where to go to find like-minded people trying to achieve the same thing as you, um, then that would be a big achievement.
Yeah. What are you doing to prepare and grow for next year
That's a
that
great
you can
question.
share?
Well, we're putting out, yeah. Well, I could definitely share that we're putting out our very first camp compilation album of some of our favorite songs that were made at Antisocial Camp, and that will be coming out probably in January of 24. So I'm very excited to hear. I'm very excited for everyone to hear just the variety of songs. They're amazing. It really spans genres and speaks to the talent that was there. And what else am I? So, on some personal news, in the midst of doing everything that I just told you I was doing, one, I also have a 2-year-old, which is a whole other job in itself.
Yeah.
And then I created for some personal news, I created an artist project. I was telling you a little bit about it. It's called Brockenberry and Ross. It's with my friend Ernest Brockenberry, who's the
Yeah,
amazing singer I was telling you about.
shout out the show, because I think this is going to air
Yeah,
before
yeah,
the
yeah.
show, so do that.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, I mean, obviously, it has a shorter window life. Uh, the show, but on September 26th, Tuesday, September 26th, we're playing our first show at Elsewhere. Think of it as Simon and Garfunkel songs sung by D'Angelo or Moses Sumney, just the best R&B singer you can think of, singing essentially like acoustic guitar, finger-picked folk songs. So it's a pretty cool combination. We just recorded 20 songs in one day at the Power Station Berklee facility, and we're going to be putting that out soon. So, never a dull moment, Jake.
No, I was going to say, I was like, yeah, I feel like you need to be busier.
But to your point though, like, we feel like the camp and the community, we feel like this camp can be as big as South by Southwest, and it might take 10 years to do so, but look, there's an opening for it. There's a hunger and desire for songwriting and songwriting camps. We feel like this is sort of the new wave of that kind of festival. There's no reason why we can't think and associate of Antisocial Camp to New York the way that we do for South by Southwest to Austin. So that's really, in all kinds of ways, that's what we're working on.
Yeah. Oh, I have no doubt in my mind that you're gonna be, I feel like I'm gonna say 2 years, or maybe even 2 years, you're gonna listen back to this and be like, whoa, I had no idea that this was even gonna go like this big. That's just my hope for you, because I think that's the path that you're on. And in just hearing everything that you've shared with us today, and hearing just around the New York community, the way people praise just all of your work, I not only is it's just so inspiring to me, because I think as somebody who's like young in their career, it's just so refreshing to be like, okay, this isn't all toxic and scary, and I don't have to be like watching my back at all times. Like, entertainment doesn't have to be the most terrifying like job in the world. Like, it's very comforting, I think, is what I'm trying to say. And then to be brought like to like-minded people, and like I feel like you can assume if they're in that space with you, they feel the same sort of way of like, I'm not here to compete with you, I'm here to collaborate with you. And there is a world of a
Mm,
difference with that. So
yes.
I just am so excited to look towards everything that you're doing. I want to ask you, well, I always say one last question, but it usually ends up not being one last question. I always end up asking a follow up. Um, but
Can I just piggyback on what you
oh,
just said a second ago?
please take all the
And
time you need.
I think it's very important for creatives, artists, to know that you're incredibly brave. Uh, Almost all of you are smart enough and have the resources enough to go into anything else, something that is safer, easier, something that will pay the bills, and will make your parents proud.
Yes.
um, and you chose to not do that, right? You chose the path less traveled. It's a being an artist in any respect is a leap, right? You are just jumping, and you're hoping something is going to figure itself out, and that takes an extraordinary amount of courage. And part of the reason I want to continue to celebrate my whole community is because we all need to hear from each other that you are brave, you are talented, and that you deserve to be praised as much as the banker and the lawyer and the doctor does. Maybe even more so, because you're taking a risk, and you're trying to enrich the world with what is deep inside you. And we only have one life, and to be able to dedicate our lives to doing that is an incredibly hard and difficult road to go down, but hopefully one that is rewarding, whether or not we quote unquote succeed according to those
Yeah.
standards. So, I really do praise all of you who are listening that are creatives and pursuing it, because it's just so hard. And you could be doing anything else, but you're not.
Yeah. I think that's phenomenal advice and a phenomenal reminder. I was told really recently by somebody too that like we always really see the kind of the deficit of like between where we are now and where we're going, because that just makes sense. Like that's where we're focused, and that's why we're doing today to get where we want to be tomorrow. And that seems so logical. But like, I don't know, like it's crazy. It's like my friends are really good at this, of just being like, you went on a tour and you did that. Like, that's pretty, like you kind of did it. Like at one point that's what you were trying to make up for, and that's where you're trying to get. Like, you made it there. Like, it's good to be forward thinking and set goals if that's the way that you're motivated, but like it's also so important to remember like you kind of made it there. And not to get too sentimental, because I have yet to cry on a podcast, and that's amazing. um but I feel like what I love so much about remembering like those things is that like that an experience can never be like taken away from you. It's like it doesn't even matter like if this never happens again, or let's say like, I mean it'll happen again, but like, somebody in a room during the camp and writes a great song and they feel empowered and inspired. Like, no one can take that away from you, even if it stops today. Like, you did something that you sought out to accomplish, and there's something just so like human and inspiring about that. I don't know, maybe that'll be my topic in therapy this week. But
Mm.
I
All the more reason to be kind, and equitable and delicate and
Yes.
sensitive with your fellow peers too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Instead of being mad that they achieved some milestone.
Yes.
So it's just a good reminder. And again, I have to be reminded of these things too. But we're all doing a hard thing together. So let's be nice and sweet to each other. And let's be angry at the people that deserve to be we deserve to be angry with.
Yes, I'm gonna echo that, and we will both not be elaborating on that further. Great.
Yes, great.
The
We can talk off
last
mic about some of those people.
Yes, deal. The last question that I want to ask you is the question that I always like to ask at the end of every single episode, and I can't even. We're at the end. We didn't even like touch into much of the artistry. We didn't even talk about the like how you're a professor now. Like I feel like I'm doing a disservice to your career by skipping past all that, but I encourage everybody to look into that and reach out to you just in general to hear more from you. But the last question I want to ask is, folks have spent about 45 minutes with both of us. And like one of the issues that I have with a lot of podcasts that I use for inspiration are, they'll end and I don't really know what the next step for me is. And I can be really inspired, but I have a really hard time taking an idea to something like really tangible and practical. So if somebody has another 45 minutes, or as I like to say, like, let's say somebody's going on their lunch break at work right now, or they're waiting for a session to start, they have 15 minutes. What is something that they can be like, okay, Danny told me to do this. And like, this will just like, no matter how much time I have, this will get me like one step further today. And that can be for a producer, that can be for a songwriter, or just everybody in general too.
Great question, because tangible results and tangible actions are the only way that we move forward, right? We have to be big visionaries, and we also have to be nuts and bolts people, because no one else is doing that for us. And also, if someone is doing that for us too, we also need to be good at the nuts and bolts thing to hold that person accountable, right? So, to answer your question, if you are a songwriter, artist, creative, producer, whoever you are, get in touch with your PRO immediately, BMI, ASCAP, CSEC, etc. And it is their job to connect their writers with other writers, artists, producers, etc. They are the first point of contact for creating community. When I was ready to start doing producer sessions, I went to my PRO, BMI. They connected me with my first set of collaborators, and I took it from there. Discovering this wide network of others. So the idea is to, if the idea is to sort of start digging in and learning about who all your other peers are, and that's important for all kinds of reasons, then that's the first step you take, because it's their job to get you those connections. And by the way, if they're not getting you those contacts and connections, you should switch and find out in your local city who has the most active creative department in a PRO. I have done that myself. I switched from one PRO that was not helping me into another one that did help me. So,
Nice.
Look, you need to be active in your own career and not be passive and not wait for others to help you. You need to do it. Go do that yourself. So PRO, number one. For artists, we talked about this briefly before. You need to get really good at TikTok and Instagram. And if you yourself are not doing it, there are companies now who you can hire and outsource to do it for you, to create a strategy and create a vision, and let them do the nuts and bolts of editing videos and etc. You'll have to pay for it, but think about the time that you'll get back doing it yourself, and like do the math of how many hours that is, and what would it be worth X amount of your time to hire someone else to do it better, maybe. So those are practical. Those are a couple of practical steps I would take. And for songwriters and producers generally, collaborate. Get into as many, especially for producers and behind the scenes producers and top liners. It's your goal to get cuts, right? To get releases so that you can put together a reel that says these are my releases, so that you can then use that to leverage to get into bigger rooms with bigger artists and bigger songwriters, right? And you want that list to be long and impressive. So just jump into as many sessions as you can, especially if you are just starting out, so that a couple of years in you can start to be somewhat more selective, and then so forth. How's that?
Great advice.
Wait, I'm not done.
Okay,
Read books.
Keep going. I'm not gonna ever stop you.
First, listen to podcasts like Jake's. Listen to every podcast Jake has put out, and listen to the smart people he has on. And then listen to the other music-related podcasts, ones like Switched On Pop. They actually did a big feature on the Instagram, which is very exciting.
Yes.
And the writer is learn practically who are the professionals in this business. Listen to their stories firsthand, the way you're listening to my story firsthand, so that can give you some instruction on what to do next, right? Because it's the combination of my advice and 40 other people's advice that will kind of land with you on what the next steps are going to be, which leads to my next step of advice, which is read books, right? And not just, you should read music biographies, and those are important because those are people doing what you want to do. However, those industry models are outdated, right? Reading biographies on, the Beatles and Marvin Gaye, as much as those might be your heroes, that's no way to understand how to make it in music these days, right? So, read books on that, on how to make it in music today as well. My friend Ari Herstand has written a great book on how to do that. Many of you probably know of him as well. And then also read books that have nothing to do with music, right? For example, I just read David Goggins' book. I don't know if you know who that is. This is a guy who is was on the Navy SEAL team, and his level of achievement is beyond anything I've ever. He's just the biggest badass of all time. And he just explains basically how to get past your pain threshold and suck it up and learn how to win and get into a winning mindset. A guy like Tim Ferriss has an amazing podcast and has written fantastic books on how to change your mindset to one who is a peak performance achiever. These kinds of things, again, not specific to music, but specific to people who are succeeding and winning. And you want to be surrounded by voices and you want to hear the stories of others as much as possible. That, I think, is a starting point. Reach out to me for the next time you have me on. I have a number of other ideas that come to mind, but I figure maybe that's enough for now.
People can start with something. There's something in there for everybody, and something enough that people will be waiting for your next step too. So that was incredible. I'm obsessed with all that.
Related to the books, though, it's not just about reading things that are not related to music, but it's also just absorbing culture generally, right? Yeah. So you have something to write about and be inspired by. Go to the art museum, go see some great architecture, go take a trip to Japan, do something to fulfill your life and get outside the bubble of your own inspiration, right? I'm obsessed with the Beatles. I'm one of these guys that knows every little detail about the Beatles. I need to be pushed to learn about, Sartre and the philosophy of the 1940s, and those people, learning about a whole new school of thought and time period and culture that is outside of mine makes me want to jump back in and write new songs and create new art. So I would say go do something fun that is fulfilling to you creatively, artistically, and allow yourself to do it. Allow yourself to play in it. Because it's easy for us to think that that's not work, or that we don't deserve to have a play date at the museum, and we do, yeah. and it's highly necessary.
Yeah, Danny, I'm even more wowed by you than I was before our conversation, which I had a feeling was going to happen. Thank you so much for your transparency and your time today. I really, really am so excited to see everything that you do.
Oh, well, thanks so much. And congratulations on the show. I can't wait to hear who you continue to have on. And yeah, happy to be back anytime.
Thanks for joining me today on Groundbreaking. You can keep up with Danny, the Antisocial Producers Club, and all his incredible work by following and tuning in to the links in the description. Thanks again to Danny for being on the show. Stay tuned for more next time, and as always, be sure to rate and comment on the show from wherever you're listening. You can also connect with me at Jake Brewer Music across all social channels and see more of what Friendly's up to at Friendly Media or by visiting friendlymedia.com. That's FRNDLY Media. I'll see you next time for more Groundbreaking.